Today on the Women Founders podcast, we are joined by Roshi Chillar, a leader redefining what it means to build and lead in India's real estate sector. From studying economics at NYU to earning a master's in real estate at Cornell and now driving large scale developments at Landmark Group, Roshi represents a new generation of women entering a traditionally male dominated industry. In this episode, we'll talk about breaking barriers, building credibility, navigating family legacy, and what the future of inclusive leadership in real estate really looks like. And on top of all of that, she's also my sister. Welcome, Roshi.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel like I've had a full circle that I'm back here and I'm so glad that you decided to actually do this.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So let's get into it. So you've studied economics at NYU and later you did real estate at Cornell. How did those academic experiences shape the way you approach real estate now?
Right. So I didn't think that I was going to be where I am. And that's typically what happens with a lot of us when we are navigating through our careers. And so I think when I look back now, I think study economics really shapes your understanding overall of how a country runs and economy runs. And you don't realize that when you're grinding really hard and going through macro 101 and econometrics and going through those tables and figuring out R and whatnot. But I think it really comes down to how it shapes your thinking. And if you think about a company as a country, an economy, uh, you learn about how countries work as a business, right? And that really helps you adapt in understanding any kind of business that runs, be it any industry as well. So I think that really fits well, and I think uh, which gives you a lot of flexibility and adaptability, and which is why I think in the first place that it was my conscious choice since I wasn't very sure on which industry to pin down myself for. And that really helps in giving you an idea about how to think about, I think, problem solving, because economics is nothing but a very visual and creative problem solving. So that all comes together and helps you build all these buildings, I guess, in real estate, and as well deal with not just the macros but also the micros that are involved in it.
That actually really is insightful because, as a matter of fact, for the audience, I'm studying economics too, and I kind of followed your footsteps, seeing like how economics helped you understand what you're doing now.
Exactly, yeah. You don't it really doesn't make sense when you're drawing the curves and you're trying to figure out where the equilibrium lies.
Yeah.
But you truly understand it when you get the theory out and you are sitting how do I solve this problem? And it won't come directly okay, my God, this class and Mr. Dan's lecture 25 helped me in this particular way. It's more generic and you can't really explain it unless you apply it, which is why I think it's so important to go out and get the true work experience and get your hands really dirty.
Yeah, I agree. I hope I can understand all of that once I'm stop dealing with R. Um, so
I'm
also
sure.
like, was real estate always the plan for you, or was there like a specific moment or something that made you decide to step into the industry?
Not at all, and this, we've had discussions back and forth when you were deciding your track and I was deciding how to switch my track. So I finally started with banking, then I went into consulting as my first job, and which was far away from the work that I'm doing right now. I think it really came down to my personality fit and playing to my strengths instead of going in a sector where I have to just play catch up all the time. I that might sound like you pick an easy way out, but I'm a strong, I think believer in the fact that when you are able to identify your strengths, you must put them at use. And I've really felt like real estate was part of like, where all those strengths really like shone for me, and they kind of helped me understand that I can do this better, and I already had some things that were working in my favor. But also, having said that, as you understand that real estate was part of like our blood, and like what we saw growing up, since the family business is in real estate. So you see that different attributes of a building, and
Um,
so it wasn't something foreign.
I'm sorry, you kind of broke out for a second. Can you repeat the last sentence for us, please?
Right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, so what I was saying is that it wasn't something foreign. It just felt like, almost felt like a homecoming, that you go out and you explore different sectors, and then you get like it just comes naturally. I'm not saying it comes to everyone, but luckily for me it came that I was able to understand, hey, like this has been like what I was seeing growing up, and I should 100% give it a try. And so far, I guess, working out for me.
And as I can kind of say for you, you've always kind of been a very social and person's people. Like it's always, I think that also helps in the real estate kind of industry.
Totally. Like, I think, I always wanted to be client facing, and I always wanted to be closer to, people when I'm working, whether it was consulting or banking, whether I was in college, doing club activities like this. And real estate is truly like, understanding the essence of people's like needs, which is housing, which is good environments, the urban environment, the built culture, and just generally community. And those things, I think, in terms of values, really speak to me. And when you understand that, I think, you naturally tend to think creatively as well, which really helps.
Yeah.
Not saying that people who don't do that can't perform well, but it surely really makes your life much easier when you're able to like understand the importance of community, because that is the backbone of real estate.
Yeah. Um, so now coming a little into a different sector of the convo, real estate has traditionally been a more of a male-dominated industry, especially in India being a third world country. What were some early moments when you felt that imbalance and how did you respond?
I would agree and somewhat like also add on that I think the gender inequality exists across countries, whether it's a developed nation or like us, which is, I would say, a very like, um, fast-paced developing country. And what helped was that I joined at a time where um, it wasn't such a foreign idea for women to be part of real estate.
For
But
sure.
I think I'm at a point where the roles are being redefined within the sector. So if women were just like, let's say, selling sunset, which people still think, and I'm not speaking about just in India. When I was at Cornell too, and like I would have these networking events, or like talking to someone who's from non real estate background, in fact real estate too, they naturally assume that you're someone like trying to go like basically selling sunsets and like showing the glamour bit of like housing and selling and all that jazz. But truly it comes down to you know making that change, and that change comes from, I guess, having more women engaged in that conversation, and what you're doing, right? Like, and what I did when I was in college. So it definitely was challenging, because you have to get that myth out of people's heads. And we still are, I think, a long way to go from that. How I overcame it is basically, never being passive when I receive a comment like, okay, yeah, you must be like selling sunset. You have to be very upfront about like, like real estate is a lot more than that. Actually, like an economy and the GDP depends heavily on real estate. And an economy that depends so heavily on one sector can't be just one gender running it. You have to have a good balance to, actually see growth. So, we are always encouraging more women to be part of our company. When I was at Cornell too, we would always encourage more women to be engaged. And even though it remains a very subdued part and like a minority still, especially at the C suite levels where actual decision making lies. But imagine this, that if you're selling a home, do you think only men live in that home? Right?
As it's
Who
also
leads the home?
exactly. I was just
But
going to
traditionally, women have, I would say now, like, it's very like partnership oriented. But traditionally, women have been responsible for household, for running the home, they take pride in it. And I think still a lot of women do. But understanding the importance of engaging women at an early level and at decision making level where they're able to give their feedback, their inputs, that is so critical in ensuring that we give good quality products. So you can't not engage women in this process because you're bound to like not give the best product which is suited to all needs. It's almost like all men designing clothes for women. How are they supposed to know what kind of comfort that women expect?
yeah.
It's almost as foreign as that.
Yep. It's almost like when you say like a movie written by a director, a women director, and women love those movies, the characters that are in it.
Exactly.
So also, so you've spoken about being, I was looking at your earlier podcast that you have done. You've earlier spoken about
Did
being
your homework.
overlooked earlier on. Sorry?
I said you did your homework.
Yeah. You've spoken about being overlooked early on. What helped you build credibility in rooms where you weren't like taken seriously in the beginning?
See, I think I'll say that um, in any sector this could happen where if you're like in minority, and a lot of things like again, I think the problem of a gender bias exists in all sectors where not enough women are at a decision making level,
Mm-hmm.
which makes them idolize women like leader and mentor less, which makes it a very one way street. I think there's only one answer, that you have to work hard and you have to do your homework. I think nothing can make you more confident and stand out in a room than that. And I really, from like all my experiences of whether it's like recruiting, interviewing, or right now being in board meetings or attending any kind of first time meeting, client meetings, investor meetings, there's nothing that like as there's no like I think I would relate it to like Carrie Bradshaw and Sex and the City. Like there's no such thing as being overdressed. So
Mm-hmm.
there's no such thing as being over prepared.
I saw this.
And when you know that you're already going to be sidelined, there's a high probability. You better have everything a lot more prepared than others.
I also was going through your LinkedIn. This has kind of been your go-to line, if I'm not wrong, correct me. If there's no such thing as being overdressed.
And I believe in that. Like you, when you leave the house, I am a strong proponent. Like you don't know what's coming your way in the day. You better be, dressed to play the part. So similarly with work, you better be prepared to play the part. You don't know, maybe one day your sales head or your marketing head or your CEO is missing. You might have to just kind of cover up and have that part of the meeting still rolling and get that client still in. So you have to be prepared for the worst situation, which only means that you can't be complacent. You
Mhm.
keep doing your homework. And I think a big part of it is going to like, prestigious colleges like NYU or like also like at Cornell when I learned this in my master's is that you have to be on your toes always. You have to be a student all your life.
For
Once
sure.
you stop learning, that's when you stop growing.
For sure. I think that's been the motto that we've also trying to be grown up with. Always be a student. But that was a really good answer. So, how would you describe your leadership style today, and how do you think it's evolved as you've grown into senior roles? Because I believe that you've been in the role you have since, not in the role, but in the company for 3 years now, and slowly your roles have increased. So, how have you evolved as your leadership style?
I think when you're working in a family office, I'm sure like if anyone listening understands like being part of a family office or even like a let's say a smaller company, a startup, you don't have a defined trajectory, like maybe let's say as at a Google or a Microsoft or at
Yeah.
a Bank of America, where you know like in a year you're going to be promoted to this, and like your responsibilities are going to escalate to like having more people under you, and you're going to be taking over a P&L of like let's say this business. It's very like what you're prepared for is going to come your way. Also, what you're not prepared for is going to come your way, and that's going to be a real test of can you handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not prepared for it, it's going to go to someone else.
For sure.
Because as a company, for example, like in economics, we learn as a country, it must work. The prime ministers are going to keep changing. The government is going to keep changing because somebody has to run the country. You can't shut down a country. So similarly, like companies, especially like in a such an important sector like real estate, you can't shut down and say like we're not going to build houses anymore or offices anymore. So it kind of came like my way,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, either I'm ready or I'm not ready. And you kind of learn while you're at your job. And I think if you speak about like leadership style, it's more to do with striking a balance. But I don't think it's something new that I've learned. I think it's more about like how I've always been. So that kind of helps because I didn't have to pretend. And I think it's a good motto to have kind of like a, again, it's more about like life, work balance. And I think once you start living it, it's really healthy environment for the people you lead to because they're not in a toxic environment where only work matters or they're not slacking where only like, let's say outside work activities happen. So once you can like genuinely live that, people follow you a lot more easily and then they're able to like honestly like give you genuine work and productivity.
I actually can kind of add on to that or not, but I've seen you kind of after obviously I've grown up seeing the business, and since you joined, you started a lot of outside activities to make people like come together, and a lot of bonding activities, I would say, to make people genuinely like care about each other. So it's better to work together in that environment and people put their hearts into it, if I'm not wrong.
Absolutely. And I think what you're doing is also an example of that, right? Like you have these clubs where you're like it's almost serious about like your career, but you know that it can't be all serious like your microeconomics class. You
Yeah.
have to like, ease it up a bit and, loosen up and understand that genuinely like where that balance can be striked. And that's really important.
For sure. Um, these two next two questions are like actually kind of my favorite because I want to know them. I'm excited to know the answer personally. I've actually never asked you these
I'm
so
worried.
formally. I know we've had informal convos, but not formally. So stepping into a family-run business comes with both opportunity and pressure. What has been the biggest challenge and like also advantage of that responsibility?
I think the biggest challenge lies in the actual like two terms, which is family business, because those two terms actually are almost like clash, right? They can't go together. So there's an oxymoron there, like those two connected are the biggest challenge where you have to again like understand where which one is important when,
Mm-hmm.
and it can't be always both are important at the same time. It has to be knowing very like being very aware at what point comes what, because both are equally important. But I think coming to advantage is, I would say, funnily, it's the two terms again.
I
Because
kind of knew you were going to
how,
say that.
right, like it can be like such a blessing when you're working in a trusted environment. And the amount of security that instills in yourself to actually perform really well because there's no like fear of losing your job or fear of loss of support of or you think that you might of some politics. It's very much like the culture you create, that's what you get, which is why it's so important that what you say, you have to honor it.
Mm.
Maybe in a company where I worked earlier, I can get away with murder. I'm not saying I'm doing that, but the thing is that I can say and get away with, like I do this and that, and I can just get away. Like it's just, any other water cooler conversation. I
Mhm.
really have to honor that. So that comes with, again, advantage and a challenge.
So everything is like a pro and con.
Like in life, everything is.
So how do you balance? This is my favorite question actually. How do you balance honoring a legacy while still pushing for innovation and change? And I would like to add on to this question because I know that you lived in the States for 10 years and you moved back to India um, to run the family business. And I know when you were in America, you were in two colleges, you worked, you had a very different life than what you have now. So how do you keep pushing for innovation and change, but there's also a legacy that you have to keep, you know, moving with?
Right. That is a really good question. Um, because I think just I took a very interesting class, and if this is being offered at NYU, I like highly recommend you guys take it. Or if anyone's planning to like be in family business, maybe just on the side learn and attend some conferences, because that really helped me understand from looking at other people's case studies and talking to other second gen, third gen leaders. And one thing common amongst all was that businesses didn't grow if they only stuck upon legacy.
Mm,
Because what's really important is adapting with time. So if you're not adapting with time, and if you refuse to, let's say, tweak your formulas or your ingredients of making a successful business, then you are not able to keep cope up with that competition. It's gonna at some point eat you up.
mm.
So innovation actually becomes not an option. It's like a necessity. So you have to innovate. And the fact that, I was able to luckily get such a diverse area of experiences with different colleges or like industries showed me the world where I was like, hey, like, it was happening in front of me. Where like there were traditional companies. For example, I worked for this company which was in manufacturing of forklifts. You understand forklifts? Like they are basically this heavy machinery. Not heavy, but like these are like in Amazon warehouses, for example. And the Amazon warehouses, things are stacked up because ceiling height is so much because they have to get storage in. So forklifts are like they lift up and like they get the things out and those machinery. So this company has been like this in legacy of developing them, the leader in North America. And they were my client. And they were my client for what? For innovation, because they wanted to add a new software in their system because everything was happening verbally.
Ah,
So they wanted to introduce a more digital like method of keeping up their accounts and books in check because they understood that there was a lack of efficiency in their working. And everyone, mind you, is like gray haired here, except the person who's commissioned us to do it. So even companies which are like Fortune 500, Fortune 100 understand, not just family businesses, that because legacy is important to all companies. Um, for that, an important aspect is that you go out there and see what your competition is doing. But there's like an important, boundary, which is you don't change your identity to just be like someone because it's cool and it's trending and it's like Gen Z.
yeah.
You have to remember your strengths because you reached a point because of some key strengths. So as long as you can keep the DNA very intact, similar to like values in like family or like family businesses, but at the same time, like in families, like you tell your parents how to have fun now, like they grow older. It's similar. You keep evolving with time. Like how you keep telling me, like, I should be doing the cooler things. And like to hang out with you more, I have to do that now.
No, I don't think so. I think you are still 13 and I am the one who's growing up. I have to ask you, please, like, just look older. But just to, for the audience, is it possible for you to mention the companies you were talking about, like the one you were working at for and the one you were doing the project for, the client?
Sure. So my banking side was at Bank of America, and I also worked in wealth management, part of Merrill Lynch. Those were when I was in college, but I switched to consulting post. That was at Capgemini, their North America office, and within Capgemini, I was doing digital implementation, so digital consulting. exactly what I mentioned for my client, which is a forklift company, and that was called Mosaic. That was
Okay.
based out of Florida.
Okay, great. Also, just for the audience, as Roshi was talking about our business class at NY, there's a business class at the Stern School if anyone wants to look into it. Um,
Really? I didn't have it in my time.
they do,
That's
they
really
they do, but they have some kind of requirements and also depends on how many electives you have. So I think you have to like see around that and do it, but I'm sure there is. So everyone can check it out if they can get in. It would be great.
Yeah,
Um,
like the sooner you learn, the better. I would like strongly urge, but I know the never-ending spiral of figuring out your elective permutation and combination.
and also the point of like getting into the classes you want. It's quite a
Yeah, and it's become
task.
jolly competitive, no?
It's a lot. So okay,
You'll get
as
there.
I know, as someone shaping like large developments, how do you like what do you think about inclusivity and community and long-term impact when building at scale?
I just feel like I really think that, you know, recently, like when I was also working in the corporate side, whether in America or India, I think this diversity, inclusion, and aspects of like, you know, community almost became like a CSR activity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you should do it because you also want to be in the league of the companies doing it for the sake of it. When, if you look at the larger picture, um, you are basically making a cult if you are not, you know, in like actually thinking about your product, whether whatever it is. In my case, it's buildings and real estate. If you're not including that, you're not building for the community. You are making it for like a closed door, you know, exclusive, private kind of product. If that's your product, do it. But then you can't market it like it's for the masses and it's for your community to like, you know, include everyone. So I think again it requires people at the decision making level to be thinking that critically. And I don't think this needs to be a sidebar discussion. Like people do it like, oh yeah, you know, we need to cover like the diversity bit. Like no, this has to be part of the conversation. So when you're when you're designing, let's say restrooms,
Mm-hmm.
you have to include like all genders, right? When you're designing like accessibility, it has to be accessible for all your audiences. So you can't be like, okay, I know I have made a product which, you know, is actually going to like help solve like some solution, make humanity better until like it really doesn't. So I think it starts from the foundation, and how we try to include it in our company, in our product is quite simple. When like from the very base level, when we are sitting with the architect and, you know, deciding the floor plans or the structures, we have to include those discussions, and not just for the product that we're selling, internally in the company too. Let's say, you know, India is a very secular country. We have a lot of religions that we follow.
Yeah.
And this is normal, right? But like you have to be mindful that if you're having a big blast on some like you know, occasion which is followed by majority, you have to kind of include people who are maybe minority, but it's as important for them, that festival or that occasion. So I think those things, and for that you just again need to be very mindful. uh, it's very easy to be on the other side of the table where you're part of majority and you feel confident. And I don't know if there's any like immigrants in the community, they'll understand that, you know, when you are an immigrant, you do feel like you're on not the other side of the table. So you are a bit like you have to think about a lot of things which don't apply to you necessarily. Like they don't come naturally to you how it comes to the other person. So simple as that, like, you know, and I think as an immigrant living in the States for 10 years, those values became a lot more important versus if I was always in India. I don't think I would be feeling it so much because, you know, we experience it. You are experiencing it, I experience it. So you become a lot more mindful about those things.
I also very clearly remember 3 years ago when you had just joined the family business, and after working like in corporate and being in two different colleges in the state, very good universities, I would say. You came to me and it was like one of your first kind of board meetings, and you were like, I feel like I felt like I felt so happy that it's in my hands and I can like make these differences. And you were like, I want to do this, and I feel so happy that I can to make these changes. I remember you coming and telling me that.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's like, it's a really like big advantage of, again, like when you discuss being in family business, you give some, you lose some. So there are those advantages. But I would say, like, in the audience, people also like listening, that you don't need someone else to come and give you confidence to be empowered or to empower others. So you don't have to be in a family business to feel empowered. And only when you feel empowered, you're able to obviously spread that empowerment. So I think that should come like a little more like, I know it's hard to like just feel like that. It should be an exercise that I think you should be doing. For example, like, women say a lot of like, oh, sorry, excuse me, and sorry a lot, and excuse me, and please a lot, which are like good, I would say, like etiquettes and like, mannerisms we've been brought up or we've seen like women around us do. So, like, obviously it passes on. But you won't see men doing that. I'm
Mhm.
not saying be like them, but I'm just saying that I have now actively, and yeah, I took this, I think I attended this lecture at NYU, like exactly like when I was, I think in senior year, where I was like, yeah, like, I noticed that, and now I've been practicing it for the last whatever years that I'm like, no, I don't need to be like apologizing for speaking. Like, sorry if I may, like, no, I have something to say. I'm gonna say it. So
Yeah.
similarly, I think like all the folks listening or like people in your club or anyone, I think you need to feel empowered first, and that takes just practice, nothing else.
Yeah, I totally agree. Stop apologizing for speaking up. Um, okay, so what structural or cultural shifts do you believe the Indian real estate industry still needs to truly support women leaders? And obviously, I'm asking you this like more towards the Indian side, but you can also speak like globally in any perspective, but just generally talking about that.
So I think if I had to compare like the Indian commercial real estate market to the US commercial market, US market is a lot more sophisticated. It's a lot more structured, is what I mean by sophisticated, and we have a long way to go in get receiving that kind of structure. But the good news is, I think with the growth rate of our country, we are sitting in a very blessed position where we can actually bring in those changes a lot faster. You know how like traditional companies take a lot of time to adapt to like technology, but younger companies come and like do it much faster. I think that's what's happening with like India. So like we're able to adapt to those things much faster. What we do need are strong voices and people who really believe in it, not just say it, to like actually implement it. Uh, Structurally, culturally, I think those all things come together, like they align once we're able to, uh, identify that there's an opportunity here instead of a disadvantage. The fact that we are not as structured, I see it as an opportunity because when something is already formed, it's so hard to break it,
Mm-hmm.
but we're already a little scattered. So for us coming together in a proper shape is actually easier. So I think there's opportunity, but played correctly, I think only can be done.
As actually from my experience too, I did like two internships. The like internships past the 2 summers, I came back home for my summer holidays, and I saw that too in the corporate world that people want the structure and they're actually like craving it. And there are voices, and especially like the young voices that are coming in, they really want it. They don't want
These
house.
are your internships in India, right?
Yes. So when I did it, and the structure was really scattered, timelines were kind of scattered, and they all want structure. So I feel like because there's young voice that's coming in, and I feel like everyone's always wanted, but the young boys are kind of speaking it out. That's from what I saw from my experience. It's kind of helping, and I think there's going to be a structure soon.
Yeah, and our country is made up of like majority of younger folks.
Yeah.
So we have that advantage of like, we are like on that end of making change.
Yeah. Okay, Rosh. So the last question for young
Make it
women.
something fun,
It
please.
is, it is, it is. This is fun. This is fun. For young women, especially students, and you've been at NYU, you've seen how NYU colleges has no campus, we just live. Considering careers in male-dominated industries, I know this is a little practical of a question, but what practical advice would you give them as they're just starting out, we're looking for internships, jobs, you know?
Yeah, of course. I mean, um, oh man, like I just feel like it is definitely very overwhelming to be, recruiting and finding a job. Like it's like, you have to put yourself out there, which is never an easy thing to do. Like no one tells you like how like uncomfortable that can make you feel to be like tested again and again for something that you're not even sure, because it's the first time you're doing a job, so you like want to be the best interviewee and the best candidate, but you're not even sure for what. So
Yeah.
it's such a black hole there, which I felt in my experience. um, I don't know. I just felt like I just went in like, with that confidence of like, again, going back to being always very over prepared. And this is going to sound cliche, but like, you can't give up, you know? Like, the world is going to tell you otherwise. And this is again personal experience. Like, even if I were like in your shoes and someone comes and tells me on a podcast, like, hey, don't give up, I'd be like, whatever. Like, but then, yeah, I think you can't give up. You chase it, keep your goals straight, and honestly have fun in the journey. Keep a support group tight, like in your group. And kudos to you guys, like, for having this setup. I wish I did this in my school days too. But really proud of you. And thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. And you have done a lot in your time, could never match. But thank you so much for coming.
I
And
disagree, but yes.
thank you so much for coming. And I hope we can do more of these.
I love that. And I'd love to have everyone live. That would be amazing.
Yes, yes, we definitely should. Thank you so much.